Welcome to the Canucks Conversation show. We are proudly brought to you on our Fridays by our great folks at Zephyr Epic, by the way. Zephyr Epic, the great folks there, over there. Get your hockey cards, get your magic cards, get your hockey cards, get everything there. Use our promo code Hockey Season at Zephyr Epic. You can use it. Oh, look at these beautiful Pokemon cards. I got another one today. The Pidgeot Harm. I don't know if you saw this yesterday on the show. Pokeball.
Oh, hell
Got
yeah.
myself a Pokeball. I showed you the Luongo thing. Had a good day at Value Village the other day, which I talked about yesterday on the show. But it's Friday. Friday's brought to you by Zephyr Epic. As I mentioned, they're the people who pay the bill for Harm and Dial, the money man, in the building. Harm, how you doing today on a Friday, man? It's the first time in the new year, right? I haven't seen you since.
Yeah, it's been really refreshing. I took the last week of December off, and I'm excited. I'm raring to get back at it. It was funny, the first game back against the Islanders, I was like, oh no. Oh no, here we go again. New year, same team. But it's funny. I'm at a point now in the Canucks season where I'm just going to I'm going to take a win-win approach. If they lose and it's a terrible game, I'm going to be like, great, that's great for the tank. If they win, I'm just going to enjoy the positive parts about that victory and just relish in the fact that they didn't get dominated and it's not a depressing environment.
That's a good is that a New Year's resolution for you? Like, don't ride the roller coaster that is a Canucks season?
I don't know if it's a New Year's resolution because I kind of gave up on, I don't want to say gave up. I didn't have a high belief in this team's playoff odds as soon as they went 0-5, like off that initial road trip. But it is a way for me to consciously frame it this way so that I don't, so that I'm always feeling great. So I'm feeling great. I felt great after the Islanders win because that was good for the tank. I felt great after that Avs game because of the Kuzmenko show.
That was a blast. And it's a good, I don't think you know the titles of these shows coming into them. I don't think you're doing the prep like I am. You do about the same amount of prep as Quads, which actually you probably do more because we will be talking about one of your articles that you just dropped today. So we'll chat about that in a little bit. But today's episode's title name is Riding with Canucks Positivity Right into the Weekend.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because that's what we're doing.
It's
and
Friday.
I can hear it in your voice, Harm. Yeah, you get to come in here on the Friday. It's good. Quads, obviously, he's back at home kicking up, counting his money. But we're excited to get you here for Friday and excited to talk about the game last night. We don't do this often. This isn't a post-game show. This is a show Monday to Friday that we talk about the Vancouver Canucks. But damn it, I want to talk about the Canucks game last night because it was fun. It was a very fun game, like through and through from the top, and you can see it on our ticker down there. It's the Kuzmenkshow. Like, that's what it was last night. It was excellent. But first couple things I want to touch on before we get into the game too much. Elias Pettersson named to the All-Star game. Any surprise there? We heard that just before the game.
No, he's been their best player far and away. I know Bo Horvat's top 5 in the league in goals, but when you consider Pettersson's even strength impact and the fact that he's on pace for 105 plus points without having even scored a power play goal, he's a decoy on that first unit. So the fact that he's producing at an elite clip in spite of really just being a decoy on the first unit is mightily impressive. I think it speaks to his even strength dominance. And I think he was absolutely the correct All-Star choice.
Yeah, I'm with you there at that point. I think, listen, wouldn't surprise anyone to see Bo Horvat voted in. You mentioned it, top 5 in goals right now, kind of battling with the Tage Thompsons.
I've been seeing the second man in because they've introduced the Twitter voting and they're getting the fans into it now. I've been seeing on Reddit that Canucks fans are trying to get a little campaign going for Luke Schenn.
I saw a Stillman campaign going on
okay,
Reddit.
Stop it.
Well, that's why when you said Reddit, I was like, you're going down the Stillman road, aren't you? But,
well,
that would boost Schen's value, going into the trade deadline.
Yeah. Well, honestly, not bad. That's a 40 chest take. Ooh. Juice his trade value. Make him an all-star. I think he's an all-star top 4 defenseman. He's worth two first-round picks now.
That's what I'm talking about. I'll tell Stefan that he's worth 2 now. Let's get to it. 4-2 win over the Avalanche on home ice. It was one of the better. Like, I think of, listen, the Seattle game was a lot of fun. Pettersson stole the show that night. Obviously, 5 points and then gets the shootout winner. That had to be that's still to me the best game of the season to be in the building for. Last night was up there. And there was a good stat from Jeff Patterson last night on Rinkwad's post-game show. This is the first win of the season where the Canucks have won a game without a goal from Bo Horvat or Elias Pettersson. I found that super interesting. And good shout out to Jeff there for finding that stat. Were you kind of blown away?
I was definitely surprised. I saw the tweet last night and I was like, wow. Considering we're almost halfway through the season, I think it speaks
And
to.
sorry, I was said on like that's not just on home ice. This is like the whole season.
I know.
That I was talking
That's
about home
pretty
ice. This is
incredible.
the whole season, home and away, just wins this season. It's a wild stat.
Yeah, and when it came to Kuzmenko, I think we're seeing a sort of like in season, mid season evolution in him, where he's been consistent with his production throughout.
Mm.
But watching him play, I think we're seeing him evolve from when he started the season, and I thought he was more of a complementary top six winger, to now he can dynamically drive the bus and create offense independently on his own. And we're seeing so many more elements of, I think early in the season, he was more relying on his positioning and being able to get open. And he was the beneficiary of Pettersson, for example, drawing a ton of defenders, and he's just capitalizing on the open space that his teammates creating for him. Whereas I think now Kuzmenko, it doesn't matter what line he plays on. It doesn't matter whether he's playing with Pettersson or not. It doesn't matter if he's playing on the first unit or not. And that's the big thing is he went from the net front position where he's playing with four other guys in Hughes, Miller, Horvat, and Pettersson, that all the defenders are drawn to him. So a lot of his goals are just tap-ins. A lot of his goals are just everybody else is paying attention to other players and nobody's paying attention to Kuzmenko. Whereas now you look at his goal, playing the flank on the second power play unit, and those sweet moves in tight, electric hands to be able to get it on the backhand and beat Georgiev that way. And we're seeing him learn, I think, become more of a dynamic playmaker even. And he's just becoming more and more confident with each game. I think I'm seeing him definitely improve in how he's protecting the puck. And he's just independently able to make plays on his own a lot more. And I think that there's been such a growth in his ability as a play driver on his own this season.
Yeah, I mean that play he made last night was a perfect example. That little assist between the legs, like just a beautiful play. And I was telling you before this, I'm writing an article. As much as we're going to praise Kuzmenko and as much as I love watching him play every night, I'll talk about this more on Monday because I think we're going to spend a whole segment on it. But the trade value is going to be ridiculous for Kuzmenko at the deadline, just from the years past. So I'm in that camp, unfortunately. As much as I love Kuzmenko and like him here, I just don't think the time is right. But let's keep it on a positive note.
Yeah.
with the Kuzmenko talk right now. I did want to bring up one thing that I found very interesting when I was writing this article, though, was you talked about Pettersson and Kuzmenko. And listen, we've seen the chemistry all season long between the two players. The regression of pretty interesting stats, like, Corsi, expected goals, and the one that had the biggest regression was the control of high danger shot attempts and high danger goals. There's a bigger drop for Pettersson than there is for Kuzmenko when they're not playing with each other. So, like, that could be just like the way the lines are being formatted, whoever Pettersson's playing with. But like, Pettersson takes a bigger drop when he's away from Kuzmenko than Kuzmenko takes a drop when he's away from Pettersson. And I found that pretty interesting because I thought that like Pettersson would be the guy who lifts up Kuzmenko, but like to a certain degree, if you look at it from certain ways of looking at the stats and kind of manipulating what you see, Kuzmenko's raising up Pettersson quite a bit as well. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the numbers that way, where Kuzmenko's been more of the driver than Pettersson.
Right.
But I definitely, like, he shattered the narrative anyone could have had after the first 20 games or whatever. I mean, I even was wondering, like, okay, he's off to this terrific start, and we know he's a top six winger, but I was curious of, okay, what would he look like without Pettersson? And he shattered any narrative of he's just a product of Pettersson, because it's so clear that he's legitimately lifting Pettersson's game as well, and that he's been by far the best fit there.
We've always said this about Pettersson for a long time, and I think this was something that was talked about probably from like the first 10 games when Pettersson came into the NHL, was like, even when he was playing with Goldobin and Eriksson in those first 20 games of his NHL career, Goldobin was doing well because he was smart offensively. Like that was like something they obviously weren't catching on to Pettersson yet. But when you put a smart offensive player with Pettersson who thinks the game in the way that I like to think of as like the new age era of offense, of I trust in my shot. The stick does incredible work right now in 2022 for 2023 now compared to what it did in, early 2000s. you have to trust your shot, and you have to trust knowing the areas on the ice where you're going to be able to get a shot that you're confident in to beat a goaltender with. And when you're playing with Pettersson, if you're smart enough to find those spots, and for Kuzmenko, the interesting thing is like the spots are right around the crease, which is kind of surprising, right? Like a lot of players, having success, looking at the Lotto line and their success, they didn't score a ton of goals from in tight. They still were like, there were players who were scoring from distance. Like you watch the distance from a lot of those goals, just looking at shot charts from the Lotto line, and it was deep. It was not a lot of stuff real close to net. Kuzmenko's all around the net at 5-on-5 at power play. That surprised me a ton because I knew he was going to come in and be a good passer around the net. Like, I don't know, like probably half of his assists felt like they were on the power play and from like behind the net in the KHL. So I was like, okay, that's where he's going to have success. I didn't think it was going to be about controlling the crease and not like a physical way, but it's not like he's getting pushed out of there either, but it's not like physically dominating in the crease. It's intelligence of knowing where your stick needs to be. And that's, to me, been his most impressive trait at the NHL.
Yeah, when he arrived in training camp, I figured right off the bat that with his shot and how how direct he was at sort of attacking, and the way that he was playing off of Pettersson even in camp, I figured, okay, he's definitely going to be more of the finisher on this line. But like you said, I didn't exactly picture it to be him sort of owning and dominating in the inner slot, because it's really freaking hard to find that to sort of dominate in that area, because you see a guy like Horvat excelling there, but for him it's like, okay, he's built for that physically, right? He can win a lot of those net front battles. He is so good with his tips and deflections and being able to outmuscle guys on rebounds and win body position, box guys out. Horvat's almost kind of like an NBA big man who just wins a lot of offensive boards.
Yeah.
Whereas Kuzmenko, there's something magical about the
like
way
his footwork in the high post is something that's compared to like a center. He's one of those stretch fours,
Yeah, or to throw a different analogy, it's like maybe he's got the Harry Potter invisibility cloak.
Oh, I like that too.
Like just I don't.
Goaltenders can't see him.
Defenders can't see him. I don't know what it is. He's never tied up. I don't know why he's never tied up. I don't understand it. I don't know what voodoo Kuzmenko has going for him right now, but it shocks me. I'm like, how is this guy open all the time in front of the net?
Oh.
And even on his second goal, which tied the game, he had the slick one-touch pass, and then to sort of see, and that sort of started the play up ice, helped Pettersson enter the zone, enabled Pettersson to draw defenders, and then Kuzmenko, where is he? He's back right by the front of the net, jamming the puck home.
Mm-hmm. Incredible play. Up to this point in the season, I think I mentioned it before, 17 goals, 17 assists. We do have the quote that I want to bring up. We got the audio here. I'll get to Aaron to get that all set here. Him talking about the assist was pretty funny. That's the other part. We haven't really mentioned it, but the how charismatic he is, how much fun he is in the media to deal with. Here's the audio of Kuzmenko talking about the play yesterday, as well as I also asked a question about him giving a stick away to a fan. So here's the audio from that.
You set that one up with the pass between your legs.
Yes, I like it. It's really, for me, I like it no goal. I like it pass. Because as I score, I say, PD, you see my pass?
Andrei, before the game, you gave a stick away to the fan. What did the sign say?
Oh, it was, I like it. Is these people and Russian words. Kuzi, please sticks. Is my mother. Happy birthday. Why not? Okay. I like it.
Like, just incredible. I mean,
so wholesome.
It was interesting because it felt like, and maybe you felt the same way about this. It felt like, I don't know, somebody said something to him, or just whatever it was for like a month lull there. We never got Kuzmenko, and then that one time we got him with Podkolzin, right? And it was like, that wasn't great either. He was talking through, but Kuzmenko came out yesterday, big smile on his face, wanted to talk, and really gave the effort and did a lot better. Like, there's a struggle at training camp quite a bit. And I was at fault of that because sometimes I talk a little too fast. So I made sure to slow down my questions a little bit, but it was great to see. And giving a stick to the kid for that mother. What a great little birthday gift.
Yeah, he's like also, it feels like he's just the naive, innocent, fresh presence, right? Like he's not jaded through years of suffering on this Canucks team, and it's just like he comes in and he just, you know, he loves playing in the NHL. He loves living in Vancouver as opposed to the joys in Edmonton, and he loves scoring goals, playing with Pettersson, and he's just soaking that all in. And because he hasn't been through all that previous pain, it's just he's got no weight on his shoulders. He's got nothing dragging him down. Man. No bad days. Yeah. No, never any bad days for Andrei Kuzmenko.
Yeah, he's a blast to have. We'll see what the future holds for Kuzmenko. I also want to quickly mention off the top.
One more thing. It's also funny that apparently his water bottles in practice, hot water only.
So weird. you and I were sitting together in the locker room when they told us that, and I remember thinking, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, it's like kettle hot water.
Yeah,
like hot water.
Someone has to like go out and keep boiling water to make sure that
they told us they had to. They couldn't. It wasn't just like a boiling water at the start of practice. It was like, no, it needs to be refilled. It needs to be.
Yeah,
that was wild. That's
built different.
Very different. But that line ended up starting the game matching up against the McKinnon-Rantanen line. Played, I'd say, more than around half the game against them. And then it was kind of interesting to watch Boudreau go with the fourth line for a matchup. Definitely in the third period. I think there were some times in the second period when we started to see that matchup a little bit. But it was interesting. And I think a lot of people praised Curtis Lazar for his game last night. The effort level was huge. They obviously throwing the big hit to knock was it Devon Taves that he knocked into the bench? Big hit there. 3 hits, 3 blocks in the first period. So he had a great night. I want to bring up, I don't think Lazar made the cut for these dog ratings, but we'll see that. Let's pull up the dog ratings here from last night, because Will Lockwood was another guy I wanted to highlight. Oh, Lazar was 118, but Will Lockwood set a single game record with a 181.69 dog rating. Incredibly nice game for Will Lockwood last night. I think it was 8 hits and something like 9 minutes of ice time. Killed some penalties. What do you think about Will Lockwood right now? How different do you look at him from, say, the end of last season?
A lot
do you see a different guy? What do you see?
A lot different. He's always had the wheels, but I see a player now who's comfortable enough, decisive enough that he just looks like he belongs, if that kind of makes sense. He's not a deer caught in the headlights, which is what I kind of felt he was at points last season, where sometimes it looked like he wasn't sure where he was supposed to be positionally, when he was maybe supposed to chase a puck, when he was supposed to stay and just kind of hold his ground in a defensive position, making plays on the breakout from the defensive half wall. I thought he really, really struggled with that, and he definitely wasn't killing penalties at that time. So I remember last season, and even going into this year, when there was talk about him making the team out of camp, I was really down on him.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't think there's any chance of him really making the team out of camp, and he didn't. But credit to him that he hasn't let that deter him, because for a player in that position who got his cup of coffee, he sees Lazar brought in, he sees Joshua signed, all these sort of additions. Sheldon Dries is re-signed. He's probably doing the math in his own head and going, man, well, what does that say about how they view me?
Yeah, that's a spot that I should be battling for, and you're adding to it. That's a tough thing for
exactly.
A player.
Like it would have been so easy for him to look at that and go, well, dang, that's it.
Damn,
like I'm not
buy a house in Abbotsford.
Yeah, exactly. So credit to him for sticking to it, for continuing to evolve, because now when I watch him play, there's a decisiveness to his forechecking routes, and that's helped him, because I think the speed of the game, he just wasn't acclimated to in his last go around. And I don't mean his foot speed. I mean, just processing wise,
totally.
Understanding where he needs to be to react to plays, how he needs to support the puck. In every sense of that way, he looks way more comfortable now.
I see that so clearly from being ahead of the play in the AHL. Like, that's what he was at.
Yeah.
He was ahead of the play in the AHL. There's times where he's not only like forechecking, he's just beating guys to pucks in a typical forechecking situation. Plays of breakouts, he's just a step ahead of everyone. Like, you can see it. You could see it with Lane Peterson as well. All year long on the power play, he was a step ahead of everyone. That's why he's up in the NHL. Lockwood, same deal. He was a terror in the AHL this season. Just watching him skate around the ice, you could just tell. There's a couple different questions here. One from Commander Vander and Jarhead as well in here. Both kind of asking similar questions. Commander Vander says, I've loved Lockwood's energy and seems to be focusing, like Harm is saying. Jarhead says, do you think Lockwood can keep it up, or is he just having a bump moving up to the NHL? And that's the thing. It's like he's always going to get to the NHL and have a ton of energy. But it's like what you said. It's the way that the energy hasn't dipped. It's still staying at that level. I'm curious if he can keep that up. It's going to be difficult. You see a lot of the times, like you're watching a game and whether he's throwing a hit or being hit, you're like, well, he's taking a big one there. Like he does get himself into situations where he's going to get banged up quite a bit, and banged up to one thing, injured's another. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens with Will Lockwood. I think back to, I think it was one of the final preseason games at home where he was out for a shift and takes a hit against a lot of NHL players. I was thinking like, man, this is going to happen to him a lot this year, and it has. It hasn't stopped. It's his just willingness to sacrifice the body to try and make a play. Not every player has that, right? Like not every player is going to go in as hard as Will Lockwood does. I think that's just like his nature, and it's going to be difficult to play 82 games like that every year. But in the role that he's currently in, like I can see him having success for a while here. And listen, when Pearson comes back, what do you do at that point with Will Lockwood? It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think Pearson's higher than Lockwood in the depth chart. And no matter how well Lockwood plays, I don't think he's going to be at the point in Bruce Boudreau's mind to be above him in the depth charts anyway. It's going to be difficult for him.
Yeah, I know some, speaking to his playing style, I know some in the organization, I think maybe around a year or two ago, when they'd watch Lockwood as a prospect, even going back to his days at Michigan, they had concerns about the sustainability of his almost reckless style and the way that he was always 150%, especially with that slighter sort of frame, after he'd also had some of those shoulder injuries. So I do think there's a legitimate question mark as to whether, okay, he has this unbelievable energy. Can he keep it up over the course of a full season? And you also have to kind of keep in mind that he is at a point now where when a guy gets first called up, there's so much adrenaline going,
For sure,
that you do wonder if, for example, over the next road trip, they're going to be going through the East and it's going to be a physical sort of grind. Can he keep that up over the duration of the season? Because you do sometimes see examples of players that when they initially get called up for the first handful of games are great, and then there's a drop off in their play. I do think that mentally there is more focus, more purpose, more comfortability, so that will help him. But I'm not sure yet in terms of whether he can keep it up, or we're just gonna have to wait and see. And I'm optimistic and hopeful. But the other thing I wanted to mention was a little bit unrelated to Lockwood. You mentioned Pearson's been out. I don't think, has anyone missed Tanner Pearson? I almost forgot that he hasn't been playing.
Yeah, I know, and it's wild because I think if he was just having like an average meeting expectations season before he got injured, he'd be missed. But
for sure, if he was playing the way he did last season,
yeah,
we'd be like, okay, they're missing some of his two-way chops, the secondary scoring,
like, the way that he rounded out top six lines at times really well, like not specifically a top line, but I guess middle
like
six,
Miller, Besser, Pearson was going off this time last year.
Exactly, or even taking it back a couple of years, the Horvat, Höglander, Pearson line, like there was the way that Pearson played worked really well there. It's just the penalties this year and everything. Yeah, it's been a big drop off. I want to get to this as well. We're trying to stick positive, but Connor Garland was the low man for 5-on-5 ice time. Commander Vander's question for you, Harm: is Garland a negative value asset right now? Or maybe I'll let you speak on Garland a little bit too, because it feels like is he at the end of the bench for Bruce Boudreau right now? Last night would say yeah.
Yeah, I mean 704 at 5-on-5. The second lowest Canuck player was Sheldon Dries at 806 at 5-on-5, and he also only played 12 minutes the other night against the Islanders, 12-13 to be exact. He was also, I just think, to be totally honest with you,
and he's getting like power play time as well, right? Like that's adding into that.
Yeah,
not a lot of 5-on-5 time.
Totally. To be totally honest, I just don't think Boudreau's a fan. I've never gotten that vibe. The first time I sort of got that impression was when Boudreau kind of first took over last season. I remember being on the road. I think it was maybe the New York road trip, and Boudreau was speaking about Pettersson, and this is when Pettersson was just starting to really start rolling in the second half. and he was speaking sort of praises about Pettersson, and Boudreau went, well, Pettersson's also not like Matthews, where he's got Marner on his wing.
Right.
And it's like he was playing with Garland at the time, and Garland was actually playing pretty well. It wasn't like this season, right? He was right around the team leading 5 points. And initially I was like, ooh, that's I mean, it's true, right? Like Garland obviously isn't an elite player, but at 5-on-5, he was still driving the bus and they were clicking well. And so I was like, if that's Boudreau's, like you rarely sort of see a coach sort of, you know, it wasn't an indirect shot, but I was like, okay, like I took note of that. I was like, okay, that's interesting.
sure.
And then he was the first sort of notable player scratched, right? Like we've seen a number, like, you know, Besser's been scratched and other guys have been through that, but Garland was the first one, and it felt odd that he was picked out considering
pretty early into it too.
He hadn't been scored on.
Yeah.
He'd barely been scored on. So he was kind of an odd pick there. So I don't know whether it's the size. I don't know whether it's something else, but doesn't really seem, he's always referred to, that's the other thing. Boudreau's, even last season again, he's always referred to Garland as a little guy.
Yeah.
You know, as like, and it, again, there's truth to it, but it's, he almost kind of, the vibe I used to get last year was like, oh, from Boudreau is, oh, he's the little engine that could.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think Boudreau sort of had the highest sort of perception of Garland last season, initially taking over. Like, I don't think he viewed him as, oh, this is a surefire top 6 stud.
No.
And obviously with Garland's struggles for most of this season, I think that perception has only kind of been lowered, and we're seeing it in his deployment recently.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing him in roles of being a top 6 player quite a bit, but not of late. Last 30 games, he's only got 3 goals in his last 30 games, and he's getting time on the power play. He's getting opportunity with top players. It's not like it's a night to night. He's always in the top 6, but I'd say a majority of the time he's been using at least a top 9 role. I've never seen him like, he's never lined up on a 4th line. There's been minutes where he looks like a 4th line player throughout the season, but yeah, it's an interesting thing to see moving forward. And I wonder if he's, you know, he was traded for by the Benning regime. Is he much of is Alvin a huge fan? I don't know.
I don't think management's huge on Garland either, but I also don't think that they wanted to, I don't think in the offseason, let me put it this way. If there was a trade that management looked at as, okay, we're getting decent value back, they would have pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
But
yeah, not
they
even,
didn't want to
I
dump
don't
him
even
for
know
nothing.
if they would just say like equal value. Like
oh
they
yeah,
would,
no,
I think
just
they
decent value.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Yeah, they couldn't, you know, I think they didn't want to dump him for nothing and decisively lose that trade just to get rid of him.
Okay, before we get to your article about who am I saying? Quinn Hughes, because I just saw a comment from Lisa in there about Quinn Hughes. Handle some business here. The Montana's daily deals. Montana's barbecue, get out there. Montana's is back on board. Good
Hell
stuff.
yeah.
Aaron, you got the photo of Montana's? Me and Harm at Montana's. You got that photo on here? Should be in there somewhere. I think it was my look. No, there it is. There's Harm.
Look at that.
Harm and myself at Montana's out
I look
there in
shorter.
Yeah, you're taller than that, actually. You know what I was going to do is swap my face for Quad's face, then put your face over my face, which would have been kind of funny. We'll save that one for next week. But Montana's, they got the daily deals. They're back. We've been home during the pandemic, and we've lost out on all the good times with friends. Remember good times with friends, Harm? They're happening at Montana's right now. So they're bringing back the viewing party. Head to Montana's, where the game is always on, and there are daily deals to keep you full. BC locations in Fort St. John. Do you think Fort St. John's in Alberta? I've thought it was in Alberta for the longest time.
I have no idea where that is on a map.
It's an Alberta city in BC. Fort St. John, Kelowna, Langley, Nanaimo, where they got the Stella on tap, and you got to be careful in there. Prince George, Tsawwassen, and Victoria. Those are the BC locations for Montana. So let's get to Lisa mentioned it in a comment there. She said Hughes is a little guy. What's the point? Because Bruce Boudreau seems like Quinn Hughes. A lot of us like Quinn Hughes.
No, like I'll be like I don't think
I think you're little guy. First you're talking about you're too short in the photo. Now you're talking about this little guy's hard. But no, in all seriousness, your article about Quinn Hughes becoming a leader was interesting, and I wanted to add something to it, but I'll let you lay the floor for what you wrote about, because I love the way that you tied together quotes. You talked to Bo Horvat, Luke Shen, Pat Brisson as well. Am I missing anyone you talked to, or that was everyone?
Miller as well.
Miller as well. That's right. Forgot about him, which is interesting the way his name's been up lately. But tell me what you learned from talking to, obviously, Quinn, talking to a lot of people around him about a guy who's, quiet, doesn't really look like he's giving a lot, emotionally on the ice. I mean, like from the facial expressions we see, the way he's talking with teammates, he's not this rah guy like you wrote in the article. But how are you seeing Quinn Hughes becoming like a leader for this team, and what did you learn in this article?
Yeah. Also, one thing I wanted to quickly clarify on, when I referred to Garland there, I don't like Boudreau isn't. I don't think he's down on Garland just because of his size. Like,
Right.
I think it's a lot more than that. I'm just saying that the way he referred to him was, I thought it was pretty interesting. But
It's interesting. And so the way that Boudreau always says is that guy's too cute. I think that's what some of the things he's talking about with Garland. It's too cute. The little spins in the corner, too cute. I think that might be what he's sort of implying there.
Yeah. But yeah, with Hughes, it's been interesting. I think going into this season, Canucks management talked to him about, we want to see you sort of embrace a leadership role. And I think in his own mind, Hughes just recognized that, okay, I'm ready. Like, it's time. Because I think coming off of the sophomore year he had in 2021, he was pissed off. He was really upset and disappointed with himself after that year in terms of his defensive game.
Mhm.
Once he felt he worked hard that summer going into last season and felt he fixed that, then it was okay. Like, I've taken care of my defensive side of it, and I feel a lot more comfortable about my two-way game. He looked at it, okay, I'm going into my fourth year. I've got this big contract now. He also mentioned, which was crazy to me, that he's the longest tenured defenseman on the team right now.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think all of that clicked, and he's like, all right, this is the time for me to kind of step up and be more of a leader. And I think Horvat highlighted that, hey, like I've definitely noticed a big difference in terms of how he's speaking up a little bit more, especially even to veteran guys, and pointing out things that he sees. JT Miller said that there's going to be times in this season where players want to hear a different voice. And he's like, we're going to need Quinn. Like, we need Quinn to be that guy, because guys listen to him and they have that respect for him. So I think he has been more vocal at times. Again, it hasn't necessarily been the rah, like big locker room speeches that you might expect. But Luke Shen brought up some really interesting points that to give sort of feedback anymore, in terms of saying, like, the example Shen gave was off a D zone face-off. It'll be like, all right, if we get the puck this way, I'll jump into this hole. I think we can execute this play, and let's run it this way, right? Like, kind of directing traffic, kind of being the quarterback on the ice. In the offensive zone too, Shen said in one of the recent games that he took a shot that didn't really result in anything, and he was like, hey, like, in that spot, I want you, like, just give the puck to me. Like, I can make a play here. And it's a back and forth. It's not Quinn sort of like demanding that things be done his way, but he's speaking up and he's giving that feedback. Whereas Shen was like, earlier he didn't do that because he wasn't confident enough to tell the veterans that, hey, like, let's try things this way, or let's try things that way. So he's leading in that sense. And I also think that one thing Horvat brought up, which was really interesting, is if, for as much as I think there's this stereotype of a leader being loud and abrasive and big speeches, at the end of the day, Horvat said, in having talked to a lot of guys, that stuff just gets a little exhausting when it happens all the time, that guys respond way better to players who are just leading by example. I mean, even Kevin Bieksa, in a recent article written by my colleague Eric Stevens at The Athletic, talking about Alex Edler hitting 1,000 games, Bieksa said, the best leaders don't even know that they're leaders, if that makes sense. It's just that they hold themselves to such a high standard and they're pushing themselves in that way. And I think Hughes has worked hard in order to push himself as a professional. And it's hard. Like, it's the whole idea of leading by example is a lot easier said than done, because when you're an NHL team, and especially when you have the type of taxing travel schedule that the Canucks have, you're going to have nights where you land at 1 a.m., you're in bed at 3 a.m., you have an 11:30 a.m. practice, you're off little sleep, the team's losing in a funk, and guys are just down. Like, that's normal on any team, right? And in that sort of environment, it could be easy for a player as talented as Quinn Hughes to sort of be able to just coast through the practice. And that's what a lot of guys around the league will do, mail in the odd practice.
Right.
And I think as a leader now for Hughes, and even as Pettersson grows into this, it's like, understanding that as one of the best players on the team, you have a unique weight and authority to where if you push yourself through that mental grind, you have that responsibility to where if other guys on the team see you pushing that hard, they're going to be like, damn, like I can't, like I got to match that.
Right.
Like it's embarrassing if I don't. If the best player on the team who doesn't have to put in this work is putting in this work, it's an embarrassment. I'm letting him down if I'm not working my absolute bag off, as opposed to if a guy is just down or he's just coasting through it, nothing special, not saying a guy sulking. It's easy for another teammate to be like, all right, like I can take it easy too.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I heard a quote the other day of like, it takes a group to be able to bring everyone up together, but it only takes one person to bring a group down. And that was an interesting quote hearing that, but to a similar degree of what you said of the hardest players working the hardest, like I look at it as like, hey, Curtis Lazar is going to work hard in practice. Kyle Burr is going to work hard in practice, but those guys aren't the guys that are breaking through the wall of having the team follow through. They are like, they're setting a standard, they're pushing on the wall, but guys like Pettersson and Hughes, and when those guys are working in practice, they're breaking through the wall that everyone's going through.
Well, it's also just like, I'll be honest, like in a team environment, you want guys like Lazar and Burrows around who are positive forces and work hard and don't complain and are low maintenance. But at the end of the day, they're like their fourth line, third pair, extra defender type of guys. They're not core guys. They're not they're like those guys are expected. The role is to be those like energetic, sort of always positive, sort of like Brad Hunt role type guys. It's the top players that have the weight and the responsibility and have that and just have that star power to where it's like guys have to respect them if they're working, if they're pushing that hard. It's like those are the guys that can single-handedly sort of like, not single-handedly, but those are the guys that can really move the needle in terms of helping change the culture of a team with their sort of work ethic, with their professionalism, with what they demand, and they're able to hold guys accountable. A guy like Kyle Burrows, for as great as he is, and I love the guy, he's not going to be able to hold. No. He's not going to be able to hold. Like, let's say, like, I don't want to pick out specific games, but if players, but if there's a top player who's not pulling his weight, like if a guy like Kyle Burrows comes up to him and or doesn't even say anything, but just like is pushing him hard, it's just like the guy's gonna be like, "Who are you? You're a seventh defenseman,
right?
Like, leave me alone."
Yeah, no, I think what you're kind of like hinting at is like the top players are going to set the standard that needs to be met.
Yeah,
right. And then those guys around them are going to exceed the standard, which maybe raises up kind of everyone together. But those main guys, the real leaders, they're going to set the bar, and you got to be above that bar.
If you don't have it at the top, you're not going to have it on your team as a whole.
Yeah. Another thing I found interesting in the article, and this is what I wanted to add to it, was you brought up a couple things of like Quinn Hughes taking Niels Höglander under his wing on the road, Pod Colson taking, I remember the story about them going to the movies together. I think Pod Colson talked about seeing Dune and he didn't understand anything, but Hughes was the same way. He didn't understand the movie either. But I saw leadership quality last year at the end of season media availability from Quinn Hughes when there was some, I think, questionable questions thrown towards Brock Besser. It was difficult to be in the room. You kind of saw the other players standing up there freeze up quite a bit with some of the questions that Brock wasn't comfortable to answer. Those are some my idea is pretty ridiculous questions to a couple of them, but Quinn Hughes was the guy who stepped up every time when Brock couldn't talk, and that was a very impressive leadership quality that I saw just right there in that moment. Because listen, Pettersson was there with them. I think Demko was maybe the fourth guy, or maybe it was Garland. Anyways, I know Pettersson was at the table, but it just felt like Quinn Hughes was the guy who, when he realized that Brock was in trouble, stepped in and picked up a teammate in a moment that was obviously extremely hard for Brock to deal with looking back at that time. And that initially to me was like, that's what a leader does. And this isn't just hockey, right? This is just like leadership in general. Quinn stepped up for his guy in that moment, and that was huge to me. That was one of the biggest examples of leadership that I've seen in years with this Canucks team, was what Quinn Hughes did that day on the podium. That was huge to me. I always thought about that. And when the thought of captaincy gets thrown around, this is why I bring up Quinn Hughes as a potential guy. Because I think Quinn Hughes could be the guy who is, it's going to be hard for Pettersson to be the captain in Vancouver. Because it's going to be day to day to day. Vancouver market, Canadian market, it's difficult. It's difficult day to day if you're not comfortable as much with the media. I think Quinn Hughes could seriously be the option of the day to day guy who's going to speak about this team. in the future anyways.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about it from that perspective in terms of captaincy, but
That's because everyone talks about the captaincy. No, the way that we're seeing it more, the more that I see it as media is like when we're there and they're like, who do you want to talk to? And we're like, well, I don't know, like it was nobody played well. I guess we'll talk to the captain. When I think of that way, like I don't want it to be like the Canucks sucked again tonight. Let's talk to Pettersson for the 5th night this week. With Hughes, I'd feel comfortable. Like the 5th night this week where Quinn Hughes is going to have to deal. Like that's a tough thing to do. Like I'm not saying this is easy. I just think that Hughes would be a guy who I could see being a potential captain of this team. When you look at who might be here 3-4 years down the road, I look at Hughes as potentially the number 1 guy.
Yeah, I also think that in general, that responsibility of sort of like fielding our dumb questions after
That's
a
what
loss.
I'm saying. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a lot easier said than done in terms of like it sounds simple. I'll just answer questions after after games, but considering the pain that's happened, I mean, there are a lot of difficult questions that are hurled at you. I mean, imagine every sort of every second day you're doing your job, you're performing to the apex of your ability, like Horvat has been this season, and constantly you're just being asked about the team being directionless, asked about the team underperforming, about another blown lead, about why can't you defend, and it's just you're absorbing all the punches, and you're taking it on the chin for the rest of your teammates.
I look at it as like how many times we heard Bo Horvat say like I'm out of answers. Like
he's exhausted.
And like that's what I think of when I think of the captain. Quinn Hughes, I feel like would be in a better situation when he's out of answers than Elias Pettersson would be. That's why I think Quinn Hughes is the situation. Because this is where I think of the tough situation. Well, listen, if the team's rolling and they're a playoff team, Pettersson would be a good captain. But I think in the tough moments, I think it would be a little bit more difficult for him, and that's where I would lean towards Quinn Hughes a little bit more.
Yeah, it's going to be in either case. I think you give it time and you wait to see who kind of emerges.
Yeah, it's not next year thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it is important that these guys take the step, because Horvat mentioned it too. There's been a vacuum of a bit of a vacuum for leadership because of how over the last couple seasons we've seen Edler leave, we've seen Tanev leave, we've seen Markstrom leave, Toffoli, Sutter even. Sutter was really important. I don't think people understand.
He's around the team all year last year too.
Yeah, like he was really valued in that locker room. So there's been a number of key veteran voices that departed. Obviously, a couple coming back in, and Luke Schenn being a great example. But that's where I think the teams needed Hughes to take that step, and it's been good to see him embark on that.
There's absolutely progression in the way we've seen with that. We're already running over the top here. I hope Aaron's okay. We're going to run a little bit late here because we'll skip the talk about the AHL team because I know you don't want to do that anyways. I'll handle that. Yeah, big games this weekend, though. I'm driving out to Abbotsford tonight and tomorrow against the Henderson Silver Knights. But let's touch on the World Juniors. Obviously, Canada with the overtime win last night against Czechia with Dylan Guenther scoring 2 goals, including the overtime winner.
Canucks prospect Dylan Guenther.
Oh, my APAT. Oh, man. My hypothesis is obviously that the Canucks traded away that first-round pick that was used to select Guenther in the 2021 draft. Did it sting a bit to you to see Guenther score that goal in overtime, score a goal earlier in the game? Did it sting a little bit?
I don't know if it stung because it's already kind of like, because he was drafted with the pick Vancouver had, he's already destined to be a great player.
True. Yeah.
Like I've already kind of accepted. I'm like, oh, okay. Like going into this World Junior Championships, I was like, he's going to be really good for them. I don't know if I expected him to be the goal, score the golden goal, and maybe that's twisting the knife in a little bit.
Captain Canada now.
But it was predictable, right?
People that were like, oh, like it's not he wasn't the Canucks pick anyways. I tell you, you're always going to look back. That was the Vancouver Canucks pick that was used to get him. So that's the way
I think they would have taken him as well, because there was a drop off in the level of prospects after Guenther. There was like a second tier of guys, and Guenther was the last guy there. And I think the Canucks weren't really they were going to pick the last guy out of that second tier prospects, and Guenther would have been that guy.
Yeah, I think so too. It'll be a lot of fun to follow him up for the rest of the season as well.
A lot of fun.
Oh man, it'll be a lot of years. Let's pull up, because I made a beautiful graphic for this, so I want to get it in here too. The Canucks 2 Swedes with Lekaramäki and Pettersson at the World Juniors. Lekaramäki, look at that, I built this myself.
Oh, nice. That looks sick.
Look at Elias Pettersson there. So Jonathan Karamaki, he had 4 points in 7 games. There was some good, there was some bad. I wrote down some things. So I'll go. These are the good things I saw. Listen, the goal in the opener was nice. The back check and the assist to set up the overtime winning goal against Czechia, that was a great little shift. There was some extremely, like, really tight and kind of new age offense moves that you saw in the offensive zone of him looking really smart at times. But like the assist to Philip Byside against the USA was a really good example. But a lot of the time, to me, like the bad was just like the effort level overall was still lacking on most shifts. He was absolutely invisible in the bumper position on the power play. And one thing I really wanted to see him do at this tournament was build some confidence for the second half of the season. I don't think he did that. He was the extra forward in one of these games. That's difficult. I don't think he built confidence in this tournament. What do you have anything to add on the Karamaki there?
Yeah, I sort of agree in the idea that this wasn't the confidence building tournament you would have hoped for. The production doesn't look bad on paper, but
not bad.
Watching him through those games, I don't know if he built the sort of consistency that he would have wanted, especially at even strength. And we need to see him have a strong second half. Otherwise, you're obviously not going to be hitting the alarm bells or anything after this season.
Still
if
18
he
years old,
continues struggling. But I think his stock would definitely be trending down if he's not able to pick up some steam in the second half.
The opposite of trending down is not trending up. It's actually Elias Pettersson, DP.
Oh,
he is trending up
that's
after
a bar.
This. He was excellent in this tournament. 18-year-old kid, big, strong, active stick. His retrievals were incredible. He was one of the best, I think, at just watching, not only on Sweden, but like in most of the games I watched. His intelligence with retrievals and kind of awareness of the space around him for those was really good to see. I thought he could break out the puck with skating and passing at the time. He was the number 1 penalty killing defenseman for Sweden. Most shorthanded time on ice of all the defensemen in the tournament. He should, after what he just did, he should be a top 4 guy in this tournament next year for Sweden. If not, maybe a top pairing with ASP. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with DP. Anything you wanted to add from Pettersson?
I just feel bad for the kid because I can't even imagine how many dumb Elias Pettersson jokes he's got.
The whole broadcast, every time he touched the puck, they'd be like, but not the Elias Pettersson from the Vancouver Canucks.
Like,
it was just
imagine
you
living
say it every
through
time.
that. You're like, Jesus, am I not my own person?
Oh, I know, it's tough. It's tough. So, I mean, really, it wasn't just this tournament that had his stock rise in my eyes. It's been all season long. And I've talked about him a lot on this show. Everybody who watches this every day knows or listens to this on podcast. He's been good in the SHL. He was really good up to this tournament and just raised his value from there. So let's wrap things up with a little Betway bet of the day. I screwed up my bet this morning, so I had 2 different ones go. My video that went out this morning was about Patrick Kane. He's not going to play tonight. So instead, look at this, Harm. Over to the AHL.
My
AHL
goodness,
hockey
I didn't even
betting,
know
baby.
this is possible.
A lot of people didn't. The Abbotsford tonight, we got Abbotsford Canucks to win and the under of 5.5 total goals being scored in this game, plus 350 odds. So $10 bet. That'll return you 45 if this hits. Here's a little stat for you, Harm. The Abbotsford Canucks have played the Henderson Silver Knights 4 times this season. How many times do you think there's been under 5.5 goals in those 4 games?
4.
All 4 of them. Nice job. I do that to Quads all the time when he has to guess, and he's never close.
Well, it's obvious because I'm like, it has to be extreme if you're asking me the question.
All 4 of those games have been under 5.5 total goals in the game. So we're rocking with that. Abbotsford's been hot, so we'll go with that one. And then, hey, if that bet doesn't hit, 4-2. That'll be the score. Plus 2,200 on that. $10 bet will return you 230. $230. That'll get you a turtleneck and chain. That's a good little combo you can wear out in public. You can wear it to fancy dinners as well.
Hell yeah.
But very comfortable at the same time. All right. We'll wrap things up there, Harm. Another good Friday here. We've gone, maybe we got to change Fridays to an hour. But the bosses at Nation Network, they wouldn't want that because I feel like we missed the whole thing on the ticker there. The farm just got skipped right over. It felt like the HL team was back in Utica the way we skipped over it there and didn't care. But
it felt like the prospect pipeline was empty the way we skipped over.
Oh yeah, the farm didn't get talked about. Hey, we spent some time in the World Juniors.
We did.
All right, well, we'll wrap things up there. Thank you to producer Aaron filling in this week. I believe Alex will be back next week. We'll have to see, but I know Aaron, you're getting some praise in the YouTube chat as well. especially for that Blues Clues thing from last week. So we'll wrap things up. Appreciate you stopping by again, Harm. Any closing remarks you want to get out of here with on a Friday? Anything you want to fire at Quads? Nothing?
Just enjoy the weekend.
Perfect. Enjoy the weekend. I tell you, the weekend that I know you enjoyed, you were down there at that concert.
Oh yeah.
All I could hear is boom, 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 boom on my windows. Dude, for like
crazy
for like 8 hours every day.
Those EDM. Okay, so I don't listen to EDM music much. I just wanted to go because my friends are going, and because one of my friends was opening, which was really cool to see. One of your friends playing at the festival on the main stage. But aside from, so like I was familiar with my friends' music obviously, but after. When it came to the other artists, it was like there'd be some like catchy chorus from a song you'd know.
Right.
And then you'd be like, all right, like singing along or whatever. And then just like interjected by the most aggressive, like in your face punk rock type EDM bass blast. I was like, I'm not used to this.
No, I was gonna say it doesn't sound like your type of thing, but you had a good time though.
I enjoyed it regardless. Yeah. It was an absolute blast.
That's awesome. No, I could certainly hear it bumping out there. The bass was always, I still say one of the loudest concerts we heard down here was Swedish House Mafia, just because that was at Rogers Arena. That was nuts. And nobody caught the word of the day in the chat today, but somebody's asking about it. The word of the day was apophysis, which I said at one point during the when the Canucks didn't draft or weren't able to draft Dylan Guenther. It was the raising of an issue by claiming not to mention it. So that's what I kind of did there with Dylan. I feel like I used it correctly today. So people missed it. No Quads is broad in the chat here to let us know that I missed it. That's that's Quads' girlfriend's name in the YouTube chat.
What is it?
Quads is broad. I don't know what's going on over there. Quads will be back on Monday. Harm will be back here next Friday. Appreciate you stopping by again, Harm. And we'll be back next Friday, like I said, with you. Harm on Friday, brought to you by the great folks at Zephyr Epic. That wraps it up for us here. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you back on Monday. Back to 5 shows a week next week. Super excited for that. Thanks to everyone in the YouTube chat. Thanks to everyone who listened on podcast. That does it for us here at the Canucks Conversation.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation, delivered by DoorDash. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?